Welcome to Blu-Ray Resolution. Come, follow me. Today, we're gonna time hop into the future. We're gonna ditch these obsolete pieces of plastic. In a world where 90% of the labels are facing one way, and then you have some that are facing the other way. No, today, we are looking at Blu-rays. Compared to DVD where they used a red laser, Blu-ray used the magical and futuristic blue laser. It's such a futuristic item. So futuristic I stuff them in the closet. I'm serious. Getting these things down are a pain in the ass. But no more bickering from me. Let's begin.
Hello, welcome everybody to the new episode of the Resolution series. Previously, we did VHS, then we did the one HD DVD I owned, and today we are doing Blu-rays. Later on in the year, we're going to be doing CEDs, Betamaxes, Laserdiscs, and DVDs, so stay tuned if you're interested. And before I start, you people are nuts for watching my dumb little HD DVD video. That video I wasn't even expecting to make. I kind of threw it together. I'm like, all right, here we go. And you people watched it. 1,400 views. That doesn't seem like a lot to many people, but that's a lot to me. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you get the same enjoyment out of this video. So no more talking. Well, I'm going to be talking a lot, but no more introductions from me. Let's begin. American Psycho 2. I'm one to really love shitty, like, one-off sequels. Carrie 2, Blair Witch 2, Shock Treatment, Speed 2, Dumb and Dumber, the 90s sequel, or the 2000 sequel. They're all considered inferior, but they hold a special place in my heart. This movie is no exception, except that it sucks. The movie has the actress who plays Meg from Family Guy, and in the movie, it gets really noticeable.
Stairs.
And it also stars William Shatner. And it's directed by someone named Morgan Freeman, but it's not the Freeman that we know. I knew this was going to be a wild ride because 12 minutes in, it already has a cat stuffed in the microwave. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. To start, I do like the story. Kinda. A girl that was Patrick Bateman's last victim grows up to be a serial killer. So we basically just see a repeat of American Psycho, just 10 times worse. American Psycho, if anybody didn't know, in one of the interrogation scenes with William Dafoe, they recorded multiple scenes of William Dafoe reading the lines differently, and they spliced it all together to make it seem like to confuse us on who the actual, like, it was a genuine mystery because they filmed it properly, and all of that leads for a very genuinely solid thriller. Psycho 2 is just wrong. In the first, we don't know if the killings are in Bateman's head, which leads to a lot of the enjoyment. It leads you with questions, and in some cases is much better. Jenny Ortega, we're just seeing her kill, which I guess is fine, but it could have worked really well. The twist ending is Wednesday Addams stole the identity of another girl and has been killing and living under her identity. So throughout the whole movie, we don't know that she took a girl's identity. The girl died. The girl number 1 died. It's revealed that Jenny Ortega put the dead body of the said girl in the closet, and she's been sitting in that closet for blah blah blah. You get the point. But I feel like if they really stuck with this premise of taking over like an identity, you would have a semi-better movie. You could have the movie as it is, but sprinkle in scenes like, oh, this girl went missing a long time ago, but we don't really get that until like 20 minutes before the movie ends. So basically they throw this twist ending at you without a whole lot of evidence to try to figure out the twist ending, if that makes sense. It all leads to a pretty predictable and anticlimactic ending. Also, the cover shows a girl with a sickle, but she never uses it in the movie, which it's false advertising. So those are my critiques. Was it that bad? Yeah, especially compared to the first one. But it's so to the point and generic that it's actually not a bad horror. Well, no, it's not a horror. Each kill is played with comedic music. It's not a bad movie, it's just very mediocre. But I wasn't bored. It's a bad, good movie. It's a good, funny movie. Which means it's a 2.5 out of 5. Avatar. Very, very predictable. The story has been done time and time again. Man is ignorant, learns his mistakes, and appreciates what's around him, and he turns back from his original team to help his new family. But I'm gonna give this movie the highest props. The storytelling is really, really good. I don't exactly know why it became one of the highest grossing movies of all time. That's a little dramatic. But the visuals are immaculate. The storytelling and the visuals overcome the average characters and the basic plot. What I love is that you put this movie on and you sit down and you're just kind of like taken into this world. It's nice. 4 out of 5. Cars 3. A surprisingly good sequel to Cars, and not only that, it's really well told. It's a passing of the torch or character retirement movie. No Michael Keaton as Chicks, which sucks, but it does have really meaningful bits with Doc Hudson. One thing I really liked is that it wasn't just McQueen accepting the fate that he's old. Like, Doc Hudson thought that his only choice was to retire until he met Lightning McQueen. So he was basically depressed for 40-something years of his life, but McQueen, even though he wanted to race, he could change his fate. He could do something more special, and not just for himself, but for others. And that is to become a mentor for the next racer. It's just a really nice story. What I didn't like is that a lot of the original Cars cast of characters weren't always in the movie, but I guess they weren't exactly needed, but it makes you miss them when they only show up for 10 seconds and then disappear for the rest of the movie. One thing I want to note, this movie is good, but it's missing something, and this is 100% nostalgia speaking. I know it and I guarantee it, but the first Cars movie has so much charm and magic to it. So I would say in some ways Cars 3 is better to Cars 1, but Cars 1 will always beat Cars 3 on just it being Cars. 3.5 out of 5. Deadheading. I had a problem almost 3 seconds into this movie. The transitions, the text. This movie is a low-budget freak show. I saw it coming though. This is a Blu-ray I bought at the dollar store along with another movie I'm reviewing later in this video. Anyways, 20 seconds into this movie, the audio has constant static. Like, I'm not even joking, 20 seconds, it's just constant static. And then 4 minutes into this movie, I'm already done, I'm tapped out. Another problem I have is, I guess, a lack of me reading the box, but I usually like to go into a movie as a surprise. But from the cover and just the title, I thought this was going to be a horror movie on an airplane. I'll show you the cover, that's what it looks like. But no, it's an hour and a half of a girl trying to hide a dead body in her hotel room while narrating everything she does. It's like a 2010 Flash escape game. 0.5 out of 5. Hobbit: The Unexpected Journey. From the director of my favorite horror movie of all time, and also one of the biggest pieces of shit movies of all time, Peter Jackson. To start off, this is a very long movie. So long, in fact, I actually partially forgot what the whole point of this unexpected journey was. But I feel like once it gets its footing down, it becomes very enjoyable. It's the definition of an adventure movie. For the most part, I was fully invested in the movie except for two things. There was a Wilhelm scream, which I immediately rolled my eyes at. And as I said before, it's really long. It's almost 3 hours. And not every minute is necessarily great. Near the beginning, it can get a little dragged out, but the last hour, I'd say, is just really great with awesome special effects, and everything felt very real as you're watching it. 3.5 out of 5. Hobbit 2, The Desolation of Smaug. I enjoyed this one more than the first Hobbit, especially everything with Smaug, whatever. Despite the goofy liquid gold CGI, I feel like the scenes were paced properly for the most part. Still a very long movie though. In fact, I don't think we really get, like as an audience, whatever Gandalf is doing, and the whole spider thing in the beginning was pretty unnecessary. Even if it was in the books, it just felt out of place. If I didn't mention this before, the music is just so beautiful, and I love it so much. As stated earlier, everything with Smaug, it was just so fun, and the ending is just so dirty. It reminds me of Infinity War, where you're just left with curiosity of like, what? Like what's gonna happen? And then suddenly, bye-bye, movie's over. I mean, it gave me chills. It made me really excited to watch the third Hobbit, so 3.5 out of 5. The Long Battle, Hobbit 3. The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. This whole movie is just one long climax. Basically, if Hobbit 2 and Hobbit 3 was combined into just like a 5-hour movie, this would just be the climax. Some people might have a problem with that, but I loved it. Everything we had building up the past 2 movies is concluded in this. Thorin learning that's not just about gold, but helping his own was done well. The defeat of the Orc King was awesome. I've always stood by that if you're gonna kill a bad guy, you need to have the fake out death. Like, okay, we killed him. And then the bad guy comes back and he does one last attack. And then that's when the bad guy finally perishes. The bad guy should always have another chance, because it makes it even more satisfying when he dies. As much as I did enjoy the long battle, I do have some issues. We saw a lot of the war, but we didn't really see the end of the war. The Orc King dies and then suddenly just kind of no more orcs attacking, you know? We don't know what happened to the stone that was given to the elves, unless that comes up in Lord of the Rings. And same with like just the general lake town in the mountain. Again, this is probably in Lord of the Rings, but I don't know, I haven't seen it. The biggest complaint I have is I wish there was more Smaug. In terms of killing him, it was probably 10 minutes into the movie until he was dead. If they can stretch 2 hours to show a huge war, they can at least give like an extra 20 minutes to show the funny dragon tearing shit up. Anyways, I'm not reviewing it in this video, but I'm really excited to watch Lord of the Rings, whenever that is. If the Hobbit trilogy was pretty solid in my eyes, then the next trilogy, I hope, will be awesome. 3.5 out of 5. I, Robot. Strike 1. Shia LaBeouf.
The car, like, I just put in that light there, in that disco ball. So the light reflects off the disco ball. Yeah.
For the record, I actually do love him in Indiana Jones. However, after watching the Transformers movies, I just have a general dislike for him now, kind of like Matt Damon. This movie was really entertaining. In Chicago 2035, robots are made as servants to humans, and the inventor of these robots detects something wrong with the company, and the only way to get the message out is to kill himself. I don't do the story justice, but it is genuinely a fun action movie. The whole movie relies on CGI very heavily. Even though it looks like smooth and not textured, your brain adjusts to it and you get used to it. Except for the scenes where it shows wide shots of the city, or like there is this one scene where the robots are climbing up a building and outside of the building is just smooth and like the ground is clean. Have you ever been to Chicago? It's disgusting. And sure, it's the future, but like earlier in the movie they showed buildings graffitied and it looks gross, so it takes you out of the story a little bit. But besides that, I don't have many other critiques towards it. I do really enjoy how like realistic it seems, considering we live in a time where you can actually buy a robot I wouldn't be surprised by the year 2035 we're at this point. Well, not the whole movie, but like the idea is realistic, especially for a movie made in 2001. 3.5 out of 5. Jason Bourne. I don't like Matt Damon. Why? I think it's because of that awful movie Downsizing, but it's usually because he gives a very dry performance, and though it's the character he plays, Matt Damon is the most boring actor in the movie. The movie itself is boring, and I almost forgot. Someone out there is probably wondering, what happened to watching movies before the sequels and all that? Well, I did actually watch the first Jason Bourne maybe 6 years ago, and I fell asleep. And that explains how much I care to watch these movies in order. And also, I will eventually get to the Bourne movies in my DVD review. What else about Jason Bourne? Tommy Lee Jones is constantly sitting down, so I think he was just there for the paycheck. And yeah, nothing else. I didn't care for it. 2 out of 5. Magnificent Seven. 10 minutes in, I realized I watched this movie already many years ago. The same year I watched Jurassic World 2, I think. It's very specific, but besides the intro, I remember nothing about this, so it's basically like I've never seen it before. So let's just continue. And it wasn't half bad. I was kind of dreading this one because I had this thought that it was going to be a crappy modern remake, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't anything special, but it was just a nice Western shooter. Some things did seem rushed, like some of the character origins are just thrown in there. The native character comes to mind because it was like a 5-minute introduction and then suddenly he's just here to fight this random guy. Denzel Washington might have mentioned the other native evil foil because they do fight later on, but I probably missed that. Either way, 3 out of the 7 characters seemed rushed for the sake of just moving the plot along. That's about it though. 3.5 out of 5. Man with the Golden Gun. Bond groped a sumo wrestler and pushed a kid off a boat, but sadly, it's not all that. I'm aware that many Bond movies before the 2000s were campy action movies, and I'm not sure how I will feel about that going forward, because I will eventually watch them on VHS or DVD or Laserdisc, because I love the more serious side of Daniel Craig's Bond, but I also love campy, stupid movies. So that's how I felt about this. Well, first off, it was boring, but I did really love the ridiculous stuff in the movie. The whole Golden Gun thing is flat out dumb, and it's something only a James Bond movie could pull off. The movie pulled it off pretty well for how crazy it is, but it's just forgettable and boring. Pocahontas 1. The whole movie has a very unsettling feeling. It's animated extremely well, just like a lot of animated Disney movies from the 90s, but it seems like they did a lot of rotoscoped animation for the human characters, mainly the Native Americans and John Smith, leading to sometimes like choppy looking animation. And okay, listen, I don't want to get into what the actual story of Pocahontas is, but do you know why, let's see, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, do you know why they work so well? They're fairy tales. They were fiction from the beginning. So having Robin Williams be a blue genie is an okay alteration for a movie. However, sometimes in the story in Pocahontas, it just feels wrong. I'm not expecting it to be a gritty drama, it's a kid's movie. But even the annoying raccoon feels more of an insult than a comedic character. You can still make something fiction and fairy tale-esque when you're still trying to pay respect to the past. I guess that brings up the question, what makes this movie feel wrong rather than something like Goodfellas, Titanic, Schindler's List, 12 Years a Slave? Well, Pocahontas just wasn't done very well. That's how I see it, at least. But just for a movie itself, ignoring any previous non-fiction side of the story, it was just okay. I love Disney princess movies. Well, princess in quotes in this one, but out of all the princess movies I've seen, this is my least favorite for the one reason: it's just not very exciting. Music is forgettable, it's very simple and to the point, and it's predictable. 3 out of 5. Pocahontas 2. I really do hate that raccoon. He's so annoying. And yeah, it's the sequel. It's truthfully just nothing. They threw away the love plot from the first movie to make this movie more historically accurate, I guess. And there was 2 lines that made me laugh, both being about women not being able to do their jobs, and I found that really funny. That's about it. 2.5 out of 5. Quantum of Solace. Definitely my least favorite Daniel Craig Bond that I've seen. I think I own Casino Royale on DVD, so that'll be reviewed much later, but from what I own on Blu-ray, this one is the most boring. It's just a lot of talking. Sure, there's action, but it really is just dialogue and a lot of nothing. And honestly, in some parts, it doesn't even feel like a Bond movie. It just feels like Bond does something unethical, I guess. One of the biggest things is that MI6 and M say, you know, where is he? Don't let him do it again. And then he does it again. Like, it's just like it's a repetitive formula. I don't have much else to say, so 2.5 out of 5. Rogue One. Here's my main problem with this movie, and that thing is, it's not even the movie's fault. I'm not a Star Wars guy. I've always found Star Wars too fantastical and sci-fi. I enjoy the mix of realism alongside sci-fi. Not saying I hate it, but I don't love it. So I'm not really the right person to review something like this. But was it good? Yeah, it was fine. One thing I really have to give it props for is how beautiful it is. The scenery, the just everything is just very pretty to look at. I also like the idea of it, the moments before the first Star Wars. Who doesn't love a movie that basically leads straight into the next? Is it unnecessary? Yeah, but it was fine, and it was okay. And that's about it. 3 out of 5. Straight Outta Compton. A really good music biopic. The genre, for me, really got overplayed with Bohemian Rhapsody and the Elton John one. But Straight Outta Compton was the beginning of that movie trend, and it's definitely one of the better ones. What I will say is that the acting is outstanding, especially O'Shea Jackson Jr., who plays Ice Cube, who, if you didn't know, it's Ice Cube's son. So basically, you're just watching Ice Cube. Basically, every actor does a fantastic job, and it really feels like you're experiencing the story. What I didn't like, though, is that some of the scenes felt like they're cut at the wrong places, like the editing is very off. It doesn't take you out of the movie, but when it happens, you get out of focus of what's happening, and you just think like, huh? Wait, what happened? It also feels like they could have done more, despite it being a 2.5 hour long movie. But it's a good movie, and it's a great retelling of Eazy-E and the NWA. 3.5 out of 5. Skyfall. This is kind of what I wanted with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Old character realizes he's not fit to really do his past adventures, and despite his trouble, he still pushes on to finish his goal. I won't get into Dial of Destiny because it makes me angry, but for Skyfall, it was very good. It slows down a bit in the middle, but the beginning with that fantastic Adele song and the last hour and 30 minutes of the movie were just really fun action. I usually have complaints about action movies like not being enough. Like I think it was Fast 6, the one with the tank on the highway. In Fast 6, the main villain wants to have a device that can spy on every single human being and therefore take over the world. But the movie didn't feel like it was taking that to a big enough level, leaving you with a boring plot that seems like it's not really going anywhere. Skyfall almost has that feeling, but it's not a complaint, it's a compliment. The plot isn't taking over the world, but it's revealing the identities of a bunch of Secret Service agents, which is a pretty big deal. But the whole movie feels low-key, which plays in its benefits, because going back to how this is a retirement movie, the character realizing he's too old and all that, the movie doesn't need a crazy high-stakes adventure. It's less on having big explosions and more of a closure of the James Bond character, even though there's, I think, 2 sequels after this movie. Overall, I liked it, and it makes me want to watch more James Bond. Overall, I liked it, and it makes me want to watch more James Bond, which is a surprise because I wasn't a fan of Dr. No and From Russia with Love. So hopefully, more good is to come. 3.5 out of 5. Sneakover. Actually the worst fucking movie of all time. I bought this on Blu-ray at the Dollar Tree, along with Deadheading. It was cheap, I thought it looked funny. The cinematography is on par with something I would make, which is the biggest insult I can think of because I'm just a guy with a camera filming out of his bedroom. This is, granted, a Kickstarter movie, but it's so bland and ugly to look at. So if the best they can do is something a solo guy can make, get better. There's no creative camera angles or anything. It's just flat shots. The writing is so incredibly awful. 80% of it is just fart jokes. And the acting alongside the writing is 5 times worse. Every actor is mumbling every sentence. And listen, no offense to the actors, or especially the kid actors, but they're all shit. The sound editing constantly has static. One thing that is common in this movie is breaking the fourth wall and these weird cartoon storyboard scenes. It's most likely a budget thing because these scenes are only here for exposition or the filmmakers not having the money or even like the creativity to film these not very complex scenes. I've seen bad movies. Titanic 666, for example, is a really awful movie, but it has relatively funny scenes. Meet the Feebles, which I referenced in The Hobbit, is also really, really bad. But there was care and there is creativity put into this, which shadows over if it is a bad movie, because you can see that there was work put into it. This movie, there's a vision, but the director had no idea how to make a movie, leading to a movie that looks like it was filmed by a 5-year-old. The moment it started, I wanted it to be over. Genuinely the worst thing I laid my eyes upon. I would give it a 0 out of 5 if I could. 0.5 out of 5. Spectre, the sequel to Skyfall, and I would say it's almost on par with its predecessor. It moved away from the whole retirement legacy feeling to just a nice James Bond sequel, which sometimes I prefer that. The chase scene was really fun. I didn't touch on this, but Daniel Craig is just a great James Bond, and I love him as an actor. The plot is really cool. It's Bond up against literally the person causing him all of his pain. It's basically him against a metaphorical pain, which plays into the ending where he doesn't shoot him because you can't just get rid of your problems. You have to live with them. One problem I have is that the last half hour went by like super quick. I feel like in the matter of 10 minutes we went from a suspenseful climax scene to him getting back to London. For example, the love interest doesn't want to live a dangerous life, so she leaves. Then Bond finds out that the main villain is alive. Then suddenly the whole MI6 building is going to blow up with the love interest trapped inside. You can tell they had to get to the ending, especially with the girl. It's like, okay, how do we get her kidnapped? Oh, okay, she leaves. Then suddenly she's tied up in a bomb building. It just goes by a little bit too fast. But overall, the movie is a ton of fun. Great action scenes, good story. It's not as good as Skyfall, but not at all it means that it's bad. So 3.5 out of 5. Tron Legacy. This movie is really strong. Starts off super strong, ends super strong. Only downfall is that it has the dreaded nightclub scene where the movie is just basically an exposition. So it takes a while to get to where we need to go, but it's still enjoyable. Really fun action. CGI on de-aged Jeff Bridges is questionable. One problem is some of the characters, specifically Clue. It takes forever to get to. It's kind of made a mystery of his character. We don't really get like much information about him. That should be something that's told near the beginning or like sprinkled throughout, but we don't know how he came to be until like the middle of the movie. But those are my only complaints. And for having almost no blood, the gruesomeness of NPCs exploding into pixels was really fun. The story was goofy and cool and had a pretty satisfying ending. A true legacy sequel. 4 out of 5. Alright, so these next movies are the Planet of the Apes sequels. Now technically I probably should have put these alphabetically, but like it's easier just to talk about all of them at once, so there we go. Beneath the Planet of the Apes. So I actually rewatched the first Planet of the Apes since it's been a good while since I've watched it, and it still holds up. A solid 4 out of 5 despite the funny monkey suits. It's genuinely a good sci-fi movie, and it's the perfect example of the less detail there is in a movie, the more questions you'll have, but it's a movie that makes you think. So that's actually for the better. Like, why is it called Planet of the Apes if we only see a small city? Even though it's stated, why did they never attempt to go into the Forbidden Zone earlier if the apes had been there for a couple hundred years? What caused the planet to be like this? Even though the city of apes can't go past the Forbidden Zone, we're only dealing with the New York area, so is there other civilizations? There's lots of questions, but you don't think on it because that's not the point. The movie isn't trying to make those questions asked, it's focusing on one thing, and that's at one point, humans lost and apes won, and that's where we are now. And for that, it works really well, and it's one of the reasons why the movie is so good. The mystery of it all. That's what makes that movie good. And then we move on to the sequel. Some of my questions have been answered. Can't go past the Forbidden Zone? Well, the secret human society, of course, is preventing it. That makes sense, sure. And considering the New York subway looks straight from the 70s, what happened to Earth? It must have been destroyed not too far after the 2000s. Who are these advanced humans and what's their purpose besides guarding a nuke? The first Planet of the Apes was very simplistic, and sure you have questions, but because they don't explain on it, you don't worry about it. But now, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, it brings so much information to you that now you're just overloaded with detail, and it makes you flustered. The movie is filled with a lot of repetitive scenes that feel like they kind of lead to nothing, until we get to the advanced humans, which I actually do really enjoy. The whole reveal that the human civilization has been alive the whole time is really cool, and then they pull their skin off for some reason. I feel like if this movie was done better in terms of showing and telling the story, it might have been better, but unfortunately with the tame action and okay story, it lacks behind the first movie. The ending is really cool though, I kind of admire it. 3.5 out of 5 for the idea, but a total of 3 out of 5 for the execution of everything. Escape of the Planet of the Apes. And this is the movie that answers all of those mysterious questions from the first movie. Questions that I wanted answered, but is really what made the first movie so awesome because it made you think. And now that all those questions are answered, it makes the rest of Escape of the Planet of the Apes feel kind of empty. I really like the first, 3 minutes or so. It's basically the first movie retold, but with apes instead of humans. And I'm gonna ignore how BS the explanation of how Zero and Cornelius got to the past. It's a time travel movie, I forgot to mention that. So basically, spoilers for Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the movie ends with the Earth getting nuked. So this movie explains that right before they got nuked, one random ape that, funny enough, got killed was able to solve 20th century computer space craftery, even though in the first movie it was proved that apes can't achieve flight. So I don't care, I don't know how they, whatever, I hate time travel.
Not fell, flew.
Flight is a scientific impossibility.
And even if it weren't, why fly?
Anyway, the beginning is decent, I enjoyed it, but honestly the whole movie is just a bore. I love Zira and Cornelius as characters, but they aren't given much to work with, and it sucks because this could have been an okay movie, but it's just boring. 2.5 out of 5. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Despite being the most violent, it's the most boring by far. I enjoyed the conquest, the takeover of mankind, but it's such lackluster. There was a bit of a message on how slavery is wrong and this and that, which is all fine and dandy, and Caesar's final speech was cool, but I just have one gripe. In Escape, Dr. Zira and Cornelius gave humankind their future. It wasn't a Simpsons prediction. They came from the future and said, hey, there will be a plague that kills cats and dogs. Humans will take apes as pets and turn them into slaves, right? So even if the people didn't believe them back in, I don't know when it takes place, the 70s or whatever, nobody thought throughout the next 20 years that when the plague happened, that came true. And then when humans took apes as pets, nobody thought and stopped and just said like, hey, maybe those random apes in the 70s were right. Maybe we should stop. Like, why are we here? Why is this movie happening? Maybe it's destiny. That's a big thing in time travel. No matter what you do, you can't change the future, but I don't like it. 2 out of 5. Battle of the Planet of the Apes. This movie finally answers everything I've been blabbering about for the past, I don't know, 10 minutes. Like, why don't they go into the Forbidden Zone? Why the city really hasn't expanded? What happened to humans? And one of my big pluses in this movie, who the future people were. Answers that were fine unanswered. I want to reiterate that. I like having answers to questions, but the movie works better as like an unanswered riddle. I like being able to think about what's happening in this world. Like, I don't always want to be told the lore, you know what I mean? But whatever, I guess it's nice to know. And something I don't think I talked about is how these are prequels to the first and second movie, but almost sequel prequels. So these aren't necessarily showing the build up of events to the first movie. It's they're going back in time, and then Escape, Conquest, and Battle are like its own timeline. I don't know. It's interesting, but it's lots of time travel stuff I don't care about. But we are left with apes and humans living in peace at the end, which is kind of nice. How we get the answers were still pretty boring like in the past 2 movies. It's better than Conquest, but it's about the same as Escape. 2.5 out of 5. And there you have it. That is all of my Blu-rays. I hope you enjoyed this resolution video. As I said in the beginning of the video, next will be Betamax, and I'll probably throw in CEDs like as a combined video, or maybe separate. It just kind of depends on how I feel. But basically it goes Betamax, CED, because I only have a couple of those I need to watch, Laserdisc, and then DVDs, because DVDs I have the most. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more. Thank you everybody for watching, and yeah, that's all I got. All right, bye-bye.